All right. Well, welcome back to Roommate Confessions. Today we have with us Zoe to discuss some of her roommate horror stories. Zoe, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I'm excited to be here. I feel like I have a lot to share. I've been living with people for the past 3 years, which I feel like is a long time for stuff to really build up. So definitely some stuff I want to put out in the air. So I'm really excited for this opportunity.
I love it. I love it. There sounds like there's some vendetta in that. She's like, I'm ready to put it out there.
I've been waiting for someone to ask me to tell me the stories.
I mean, I do enjoy telling any story, but I feel like the stuff that's it's obviously different when you're living in it, but I definitely feel like some pretty weird shit has happened.
Totally.
In time living with people. So I feel like it's a fun thing to talk about. Obviously don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but I feel like honestly, at the end of the day, we can all be shitty roommates sometimes.
Absolutely.
And that's okay.
It does happen.
But it does make for very funny stories.
It does. It does.
Right after you said 3 years, my mind went to just prior to COVID hitting.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in, if you could incorporate some of that,
I'm sure there's some chaos.
How the beginning stages happened, and then of course how life changed quickly.
No, it definitely changed. So I'm going into my senior year at Boise State. And so when I said 3 years, now that I'm thinking about it, it's actually only been 2, but my freshman year was very untraditional. Obviously COVID had a lot to do with that, but I'll tell you a little background story of how I got to Boise State. So I graduated from high school a year early.
All right.
And I was super young, and I really wanted to go to college, but I felt like I could do something else with my year. I felt like I had a lot of interests at that time that I wanted to explore. So I decided to take the year off. And my high school best friend, she was going to Boise State. And the summer leading up to when she was leaving for college, it was just a really weird time for me. I had no idea what I was doing, and that was really freaking me out. And I really didn't want to waste an entire year.
Yeah.
So I had this brilliant plan to just move to Boise so I could be with her because we were best friends. So I ended up getting an apartment by myself my freshman year. So I was super young. I was 17, had no idea what I was doing, and I was living alone. So I very heavily relied on this friend of mine and her roommates to kind of be my people. Mm-hmm. And I ended up adapting into that group, which would then become my roommates for the last 2 years.
Okay.
All right.
So
awesome.
That's a little background on how I even ended up there. But yeah, it was a very interesting dynamic. There were me and my best friend from high school, and then 2 of the other girls were also best friends from their high school. And then there was one other girl who wasn't super related to any of us. But it definitely made things interesting because we were 2 little friend groups kind of joining together, and we had very different backgrounds. Just our high school experiences were super different. So it was definitely a big adjustment, kind of meshing those 2 groups together. Yeah. And we also have very different personalities, but for a while it was really good.
Okay, so I caught on to that. For a while, it was really good, and then, so some shit went down.
I mean, it's definitely it's funny to reflect on, because I think that I like to think of my life as little movies. One year of my life is this movie, and then the next year is the sequel. And I definitely looking back on it, I think that each year there was a villain in every, and everything to do with the room.
Yeah.
And I definitely was a big part of the problem my freshman year. And so it did, I'm when I talk about things in the future, I definitely was, not the best roommate in the beginning. And I think that really just came from being an insecure 17-year-old in college, not knowing what they were doing and living alone. And it was hard for them to all be physically together all the time, and I was in my own spot.
Yeah.
So even though it felt like we were roommates, I mean, that's really what it felt like, but I felt so separated from them. And that's, I feel like, where a lot of the issues happened that year. That was freshman year. And then as time went on, the story definitely changed quite a bit. But I'm trying to think of like some funny things. When I first got there, I remember it was freshman year, and it was my best friend from high school's birthday. And us four, we are literally doing like everything together. Kind of to the point where like we really didn't make any other friends. Like it was just our friend group, and that was it. Like we would go everywhere together. We would, go to the same frat parties. We would share everything, even when I wasn't living there. And me and this girl, let's call her Jackie. Me and Jackie are like literal best friends. Like I have never had a better friend up until this point. We were inseparable, and so were the other two. And we were just, always together. Okay. So then we go to Mexico. This is like probably one of the worst.
We're talking like Tijuana, Mexico, or like Cabo San Lucas?
We're talking Puerto Vallarta.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I love it. I used to go there like all the time with my family, and I love it, which actually plays into the story. But I'm like pretty comfortable there. I feel like I know the area pretty well, just based on how many times I've been there, but remember that.
Okay.
So we all go to Mexico. This is actually a year after. I feel like that's
Viva la Mexico!
I was on one that entire trip. I don't know, like nothing could kill my vibe. Like all the drama, like let's just have a good fucking time. Let's get super drunk and do whatever we want. Which, keep in mind, Jackie's mother is here again.
Jackie's mom likes to go on these, likes to be a part of these parties.
Mom is honestly a big part of a lot of my trauma from my roommate.
We always have one of those friends' moms.
It just overly involved. And she was, I think, at every single function related to Jackie ever, which was kind of annoying. But we are all going out to dinner. This is like 3 days after Jackie's birthday. So we'd already done the whole happy birthday, Jackie, it's your day, we're going to celebrate you all day. We'd already done that. She was in a horrible mood the entire day. It was like seriously a buzzkill, like crying. We are at this restaurant and like nobody's really vibing. So we decide to get those big bowls of alcohol, like
the fish bowls. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the fish bowls. And they were like huge fish bowls, like way much bigger than the fish bowls that I feel like I would drink regularly at like a restaurant. And we all get them, and we're deciding to like race with each other on like who can finish their bowl the fastest. And it's me and Crystal, the two very big differing personalities. That's us. And then it's Jackie, and then let's call her Haley. Jackie and Haley on the other one. So me and Crystal are like ultra confident. We both kind of have that. That is really what makes us similar. And especially against Haley and Jackie. We were like, we 1,000,000% got this. So we decided to like seriously show off, even though we probably really didn't have to show off at all because we still would have beat them. But we drink this thing in like 5 minutes. The bartenders are like bets with money on who's gonna win. Like everybody's kind of like joining in because we're drinking it so fast, and we're like these little, American girls that are drunk and making no sense. We were entertaining them, but
meanwhile, all the staff down in Mexico are like, we've seen this storyline so many times, and we know exactly how it's going to end up. Someone's going to be over here, and it's going to be nuts.
So we drink this drink super fast. Meanwhile, I'm like downing tequila shots. We're all kind of drinking, but I feel like this was, again, this just, it just came over me that I should be really fun, like extra fun. And So I'm probably like 12 shots in. I don't even know how much. But I was drinking tequila, which I was like really doesn't mix well with my body. I only ever drink it when I'm in Mexico. And normally when I'm in Mexico, I'm with my family. So I'm not just like
pounding tequila.
It's more like moderate and controlled.
Yes. I'd never experienced the like wrath of tequila. Yeah.
Oof.
Which is really bad. So
tequila, by the way, for the record, tequila is literally my favorite liquor, and there are some serious like
consequences.
There's a line. Like once you cross that line, you're not
coming back.
You're not going back over that line. You are.
You're either divorced, imprisoned,
when they say send it, I think of tequila. Like that is sending it in my book. So please go ahead. Like this is good.
I have not drank tequila since this. So we're all really drunk at this point. And roommate Jackie, there are people like coming out of their homes because we're making like a complete mess out of ourselves. Like we're all like yelling and screaming and crying. And they're like, if you don't leave right now, the police are going to come take you. So we're all like, shit. I don't remember any of this, but they literally like dragged me by my hair extensions back to the apartment. like literally, I think they were like, bribing me to come home with like shots or something, which I wasn't actually taking them, but I was like, this is the only way that I'll get home right now. So I end up getting home. And I take complete care of Jackie. Like Jackie, my memory completely comes back at this point. I'm back at the apartment. I'm like holding back Jackie's hair, I'm like petting her. I'm putting her to bed. I'm like, I am so responsible. Like how am I, like, I'm super drunk and I was super fun tonight. And now I'm being the responsible girl who's taking care of her best friend.
Until you wake up and they tell you what the hell happened.
Yes. So Jackie's mom was watching all of this too while this all unfolded. So the next morning I ended up sleeping outside on the couch. Another decision. I'm not sure why I made it, but I end up waking up the next morning. I am in the best mood ever. And I'm like, we should seriously like start the day off right, drink some mimosas. We're in Mexico. Let's like go to the beach. Yep. Let's get this day rocking. And I walk back into the house from my little bed that I made outside. And Jackie's mom just comes over to me and she's like, she gives me this hug. And it was just like the complete, like, I was like, oh shit, like something bad happened. So I proceed to walk in to the room that everybody else was sleeping, my other 3 roommates. And I have literally never felt like a more uncomfortable situation. 2 of them are laying in bed, like on their phones, like, we are booking flights home right now. We cannot stay here. Like, they were mad, which again, completely valid.
Yeah, when people are screaming policia, you don't want to end up in jail in Mexico.
No, you do not want to end up in jail in Mexico.
No.
So they were pissed. They were like all looking for flights. Meanwhile, Jackie's still upset that it wasn't all about her last night. So that was like one of the worst days ever. I'm sure you know that regret
hangover.
But that was the beginning of, I think, when things escalated to the point of like, okay, maybe there are some friendships that cannot continue. Like, and I was obviously at this point a big contributor to the problem. So I, it takes me a couple, and this is a huge problem for Jackie specifically and the rest of my roommates. Me and my boyfriend started spending like a lot of time together. It was a very like all-consuming relationship, and it ended up causing like a ton of problems for me and Jackie, because Jackie was my best friend. She was my ride or die. And it was definitely like difficult for her to see me kind of go off with somebody else. And
Was it one of those like boyfriends that slowly start to move in too?
Yes.
And they're like, wait a second, definitely. He's living here, but not paying rent? Like I always feel like is one of the issues that arise.
1,000,000%. And I mean, that was a big issue. And I didn't like, the way he would like make food and like leave the dishes out, and I would have to like clean up after him. But that was definitely an issue for them. But I think all of them, they just hated him from the second we started dating. They hated his guts. And that put me in like such an uncomfortable position.
Totally.
And like he would come over to our house and it would just be like dead silent. We would just like walk through the kitchen. It was like completely silent. But yeah, he played a big role in me and Jackie kind of starting to go our own ways. And even though my relationship with this guy had a lot of problems that I'm now able to reflect on, it was meeting him kind of helped me reflect on my friendship with Jackie. And I started to realize there were a lot of really bad things about our friendship. And a lot of that was because
it's like totally chaos. And I think we all have those friends that turn into roommates or roommates that turn into friends.
Or boyfriend, girlfriend that turned into roommates.
Yeah, that you just like looking back, you're like, how did we even live I mean, we're not even friends anymore. How did we live together?
Yesterday, I was telling somebody about how when you and I first started dating, and then I moved in and you had already been living with two other girls. And the girl I was telling the story to was like, God bless you. How did you live with three girls at that age? And it was probably around the time you're describing,
literally
right?
Just chaos.
And I was like, we just did it. And then, you look back, you're like,
how the
such
hell?
A wild time of our lives, you know?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Such a wild time.
It's seriously crazy. And I feel like that's definitely now, like thinking about my next roommate I'll have, I definitely want to go into it with somebody that I'm not really good friends with.
Totally.
Because it is, I mean, it really, you get to learn like the worst parts about somebody when you're living with them.
100%.
And I think a lot of the times it can help like your relationship grow. But in this instance, I think it was just way too much like
chaos.
Really, it was chaos, and the things that like, she was doing just made me feel like shit. Sure. And it was really difficult, to like move past that. So
totally. Well, thank you for sharing. Like
that's good.
Yeah, God, I know. There's just absolute pure chaos.
Crystal was dating this guy for like 5 years.
Yeah.
They were like inseparable, always in love, forever and ever. And then they ended up breaking up. And then a few months later, we all went to a country concert together, and we ended up being separated. And we see Jackie on the big screen on this guy's shoulders, and we're all like, oh, wonder who that is. And then we ended up all Ubering home separately, and we pull up and Jackie is sitting on our front porch with Crystal's ex-boyfriend of 5 years, and she was on his shoulders the entire concert and literally brought him back over to our house without telling Crystal. And they literally ended up getting into the largest screaming match I think I've ever heard.
Like to hook up with this guy, like her roommate's ex-boyfriend of 5 years. She brings back.
I don't know what the intentions were, but it was super slimy. Like there's a voicemail, and we're not like a big like throw parties at our house. We were never that group. Like we were clean ass bitches. The house was always like prim and proper.
CABs.
It caused, like, so many issues. Yes, CABs. The house was always like perfect, and yet we still were always arguing about not cleaning enough, even though the house was beautiful. But we end up.
I know how that sounds.
Yeah.
So nobody is throwing Halloween parties. Like none of the frats are throwing any Halloween parties. So Jackie decides to like text up this guy that she was like hooking up with or something and invite him over, because we were like, there's nothing to do. So he ends up bringing literally the entire town of Boise over to our house.
Oh shit.
Like, well, he brings his whole frat, and then everybody thinks it's a frat party. So they're like just people piling into our perfectly clean and nice house, like throwing shit everywhere. Like
Just
it was
trashed
literally
it.
like we were throwing a huge frat party, probably like the most iconic frat party of the century. But the next morning we wake up and we go and look in our house, and I kid you not, I have never seen like a more disgusting floor. There was glass everywhere. It was like super rainy, so there was just like mud
and
piled
footprints
everywhere.
and everything.
God.
Footprints. People had knocked over all of our plants, so there was like dirt and glass shattered everywhere. There were like hundreds of cans. It was a complete shit show. Half of the things in our kitchen were like broken or missing. And I'm like, I did not want this. Like, I did not want to have this big party at our house and have to deal with this in the morning. And Jackie's the one that, like, you know, kind of initiated this whole thing happening. And she wakes up, you know, walks down into the kitchen. She also is the one that's like always like, she is like clean, clean, clean. And she walks into the kitchen. She's like, I'm so hungover. I'm going to go. And she's
going to go. She leaves.
She left. I don't know if she was doing something, but she leaves. And all four of us are like all three of us are left there, like on our hands and knees, scrubbing our floor, like hours and hours of just scrubbing, like just black dirt coming up.
Just
and
gunk.
Didn't help at all. Literally did not help at all. And it was her doing.
And no security deposit was received.
Oh, I didn't put those pieces together. You're saying the person who initiated all the invites
she left.
is the one who bounced?
She left.
Oh.
She's also the one that was like super anal about like the house being clean.
That's the kind of shit that makes people, the other roommates like yourselves, change the locks.
Literally, stay out.
No, literally,
stay out, Jackie.
That was just like a very annoying situation. But I also kind of think I just think it's really ironic based on like how angry she would get if like things weren't cleaned, if like a dish was left out, just like shit like that. Like, oh my God, you've never cleaned behind the fridge. Like, what kind of normal college student is taking out the fridge on a daily basis and dusting the back of the fridge?
Never.
No, I don't think I've done that my whole life.
Not once, ever.
But like when literally hundreds of people are at your house destroying it, like you're gonna like, you know, go off, do your own little thing. That was a really annoying one.
Oh my God. I think we've got good material for sure.
Yeah.
So Roommate Confessions is brought to you by Chillo, the app to help you find a roommate you don't want to kill. So if you're looking for a place to live or a great roommate to live with, download Chillo today.
Okay, so check this out.
Not playing.
My junior year of college, I needed a place to stay, so I found a roommate in a house on Craigslist. That roommate also found a third roommate on Craigslist. We did not know each other. We did not get along. We avoided each other at all costs. When I came back from spring break that year, I found out that roommate had delivered a baby in her bedroom.
Delivered a baby.
Isn't that nuts?
In her bedroom. So
how did she leave for spring break and not know, like they avoided each other so heavily that
her roommate
had no idea she was about to pop out a baby?
That's kind of where my mind went too. And obviously there's some rational thoughts behind how she might not have known. But like one thing that I thought of is like, okay, so you move into this place, you didn't know the roommate initially, and maybe throughout conversation, she's like, oh, so you know, I don't drink. I'm sure the girl who called in is probably like, sweet, I got a designated driver. Like, awesome. She's not drinking.
Oh yeah.
You go away for spring break and you come back and there's a screaming infant in the apartment.
But
oh my God.
But also not only that, she said she had a baby in her bedroom.
In the bedroom. Delivered the baby in the bedroom.
Delivered the baby in the bedroom.
Like, I wonder if this was like if this was like she was by herself and just like that going on in my mind. And what if I just decided to one day pop out my baby just casually watching Netflix in my room while my roommates are in the other room with their boyfriends?
Right?
Like, what? That is
could
crazy.
you imagine if you're in the other bedroom or out in the kitchen, you just hear this screaming child?
My God.
I wonder if the roommate knew.
Now they have three roommates.
Now they have three roommates.
That's an extra roommate.
But what I wonder,
technically the baby was the fourth.
no,
Because she said, I moved here. I'll play it again. But she said, I moved into this place, and then the person I live with got another roommate, which we did not get along. I went away for spring break. When I came back, this other roommate had delivered a child. So technically, it was the third person to move into the apartment had the child.
crazy. I wonder if this person knew she was pregnant. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? That there's those stories out there where people don't realize that they're pregnant. And then all of a sudden they like go into the ER because they like look like they're 6 months pregnant, bloated. And really they're like, no, you're literally 6 months pregnant.
You're like literally pregnant.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I feel like that might be, you should add to the Chillo app. Pregnant, not pregnant.
Not pregnant.
About to have a baby.
There is also a fine line behind discrimination. Like
Yeah.
equal fair housing.
That is very true.
Fair housing. You can't discriminate.
Babies are wonderful.
Yeah, babies are great. Not everybody wants to live with a
Babies are
newborn
great.
infant, but babies are great.
Oh my God. That is okay. So
Babies are great. Yeah.
so Jackie's not looking half bad right about now.
Jackie and I are having some issues. Jackie and I are starting to part ways, and Jackie has changed a lot over the past year. Like
You're talking about like currently, right?
like right now.
Yeah, this is what you're describing. Like you guys are starting to part ways.
I mean, it's a situation that hasn't really been different for the past year. After the first year of living together, we were really starting to separate. A lot of it had to do with the fact that I was spending a lot of time with my boyfriend, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that I wasn't comfortable living around her.
Totally.
Because of kind of our differences and the way that I was being treated. But it came to the point where we had to have like orchestrated professional sit down meetings with each other as a roommate group, where we would all like have like notes in our, like I literally have notes in my camera or in my phone that are like things I want to discuss with Jackie.
That's actually healthy. I think that's a
but it
good
shouldn't
thing
get
to have.
to that point. It shouldn't get to that point.
And it was it was a complicated situation because every time that I would try to have these conversations, it was just, Jackie likes to cry.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. That is it for Roommate Confessions this week. Thank you for Zoe for joining us. And of course, those who called in. Yes, thank you so much for having us. Yeah. And of course, thank you for those that called in, wrote in. If you want more of Zoe, you can find her at zoe.warner. And of course, if you are looking for a roommate or place to live, go ahead and download Chillo, CHILLOW, on the App Store today. And of course, DM us on Roommate Confessions on Instagram if you have your own roommate confession that you would like to share. And if you want to call in and leave your roommate confession and horror story on our line, feel free to give us a call at 650-271-9641. Until next time, thanks for joining Roommate Confessions. Have a good one.